really have to look. Maybe even tonight, before the night's up. You never know. Yeah. There's so many good nerds here. The place is crawling with them.
Just showed up to buy
Jerry,
your book, see your movie, and get a hug.
I cannot believe you're here. I am so thrilled.
Oh yeah. Born and bred. Yeah.
Would show up tonight.
Yeah! Nerds!
Welcome to the opening night of the 8th Annual LOFT Film Fest. Yay! I know at least some of you haven't been in this theater since we redid it. How many of you? Yeah, it's pretty awesome, right? Yeah, a lot more comfortable. We're very excited about it. That was our big project for this year, so we're happy to have it in time for the festival. I do want to take a moment to thank our title sponsor, Desert Diamond Casinos and Entertainment. I urge you to go there for your casino and entertainment pleasure because they're awesome and they support us every year. We also were very fortunate to get a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts this year, which was a very big deal. It also supports what we call LOFT Film Fest on the road. We take some of the films from the festival to rural and urban communities with our solar mobile screens. So I think that's part of the reason we got the grant, because that's a really unusual part of our project. So we're really excited about that. We also found out 2 days ago that the NEA gave us a grant for next year too. So you're the first people to know that outside of the office, I think. So we're very proud. I also want to thank the Arizona Inn, Buffalo Exchange, the Geico office next door, Tucson Lifestyle, and Zocalo for being so supportive of our festival every year. And if you know anybody who works there or go there, be sure and thank them. I also really want to give a shout out to the staff because they have worked so hard on this festival. JJ and Jeff are the co-directors and really have led the team to, I think, select an incredible slate of films. I'm just so impressed. We also really have an amazing group of volunteers. We want to thank them, and our board of directors, and our members who get free popcorn and a lot of other stuff, and less expensive passes and all that when they come. So thank you, members. So I really, and also of course the people selling the popcorn and the tickets and the staff here at the theater, I think they're the best at any theater ever. So I want to let you know we're doing a drawing for 2 passes for next year's film festival. So there's a form you can fill out in the lobby. And just one thing about next year, in addition to our NEA grant, we're going to be going solar. We're going to have solar power for this whole building, and it will involve covered parking. So I don't know which is more exciting, but and so with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Program Director and Festival Co-Director Jeff Yance, who has a special guest.
Thank you, Peggy. I got it. So, who's a nerd? That's the thing. We're all nerds, even if we don't know it. We are nerds. So, needless to say, I'm very, very excited tonight that we have an extremely special guest with us. If you are a true hot-blooded Tucsonan, and if you were alive at any point during the 1980s or any time after the 1980s, you probably have, I think, a certain fondness for the movie that we are kicking off the Film Fest with tonight, Revenge of the Nerds. I'm going to say one of the best 80s comedies of all comedies. Or just the best comedies. Don't even restrict it to the 80s. As you know, shot it here in Tucson, right up the street. University of Arizona campus. I mean Adams College campus. I'm sorry, yes. Sorry. Don't want to break the movie wall here. So if you love Revenge of the Nerds, you probably also have a favorite nerd. You might like Poindexter, maybe Lamar, maybe Gilbert. But I think we all know that our sun-scorched hearts here in Tucson belong to Booger, Dudley Dawson. Booger, a.k.a. Curtis Armstrong, he's a real person, it's true. And he's not just Booger, he's many other people. We know him as Miles Dalby in Risky Business, where he gets, I think, one of the best movie philosophies about life ever. Sometimes you just gotta say, what the fuck? That beats life is like a box of chocolates by a million miles.
No comparison.
Yeah. Charles DeMar in Better Off Dead. Yes. Herbert Viola on Moonlighting. Yes. Metatron on Supernatural. He's all of those things, but to us here tonight, for our purposes, he is Booger, and we love him for it. So much, he loves Booger so much that he wrote a book about it. Revenge of the Nerd, or The Singular Adventures of the Man Who Would Be Booger by Curtis Armstrong. And I would highly recommend that you get a copy of this here tonight, because it's amazing. And Curtis is going to be signing copies of the book after the movie. We're going to do a Q&A, and it's going to be great. To kick this thing off, you all, I believe, have a copy of a certain proclamation. So this is an example of how funky Tucson actually is. At some point, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we got Tucson to proclaim today, November 8th, 2017, Nerds Day? And then why not? And they said, oh, sure, why not? Just write it up. We'll do it. And so they did, because that's how Tucson rolls. And Tucson loves Revenge of the Nerds, for sure. So you should have received a copy of the proclamation of your very own. This is an official city proclamation. So the mayor, Jonathan Rothschild, could not be here this evening to inaugurate Nerds Day. So we're just going to read this. You want to? Let's do it. Okay, here we go. Proclamation, City of Tucson, Office of the Mayor. Whereas the 1984 comedy classic Revenge of the Nerds was filmed in Tucson on the University of Arizona campus and at other locations throughout the city, utilizing many Tucsonans as extras. And whereas Revenge of the Nerds, yeah, you guys shout whereas whenever I get to that. You have to put whereas in proclamations, that's what they told me. Whereas Revenge of the Nerds was a major Hollywood studio production that stands as one of the highest grossing films to ever be shot entirely in Tucson. Whereas Revenge of the Nerds represents a significant part of Tucson's rich cinematic history as a popular filming location. And whereas Revenge of the Nerds offers a cinematic snapshot of Tucson circa 1984, commemorating many local landmarks that have since changed significantly or no longer exist. Greasy Tonys. Whereas Revenge of the Nerds promotes such important and relevant themes as individuality, nonconformity, and tolerance through its storyline, celebrating the success of those underdog characters labeled as nerds. Whereas Revenge of the Nerds is screening at the Loft Cinema in Tucson on November 8th, 2017 for the opening night of the 8th Annual Loft Film Fest with one of the film's stars and primary nerds, actor Curtis Armstrong, a.k.a. Booger, in attendance. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan Rothschild, Mayor of Tucson, do hereby proclaim November 8th, 2017 to be Nerds Day in this community. And I encourage all of our residents to embrace their inner nerd. Yes. And with that, let's all embrace our favorite nerd, Curtis Armstrong.
Good evening. Oh, come on. I love you too. I shouldn't shout. I'm going to make it short now because we're going to talk after. But let me tell you that one of the things that happened as a result of writing this book was I wound up, although it covers a lot of territory, the nerds really take sort of the main position in the book. And it made me realize once again the importance of the movie to me, what it was like to be here with all of those people and going through that process and shooting all of those scenes. There are an amazing number of people here tonight who are in this movie. And I think one of the things that is, including Michelle, who is one of my dance partners in the film. But I mean, you know, for here, for Tucson, this is like home movies for you guys. I mean, it never occurred to me in quite the same way that with other movies that I've done, that it's so much a part of Tucson, and Tucson is so much a part of it. And so being here just for today, I went on a walking tour today of locations where we shot on the campus mainly, and people were shouting out and you know, saying nerd and all that kind of thing in a nice way. I mean, they weren't doing it in a, you know, an ogre way. They were doing it in a nice way, and nerds. And as a matter of fact, I have to tell you, it was funny. So we stop at the Alpha Beta house, which in the movie winds up burning down at the beginning, right? And so I was talking about it and reminiscing, and I said, oh, so up there is where Don Gibb was when he first yells, nerds! And I did it like that. And the door opens, and these guys come out I mean, it's a frat house, and they were in the place, and they come out, and there's Booger. And the expression was extraordinary. I mean, they just, you know, and they were going, well, come on in, man. Come on in. We're playing ping pong. And I went, geez, it's just like the movie, only they're not trying to kill us. It was amazing. And going to the nerd house and seeing the Trilam house was, I mean, for me, actually emotional. I became emotional. And while I'm on the subject of emotional, I'll tell you this. The last scene of this movie, which is the pep rally scene, where Bobby and Tony come down and say, I'm a nerd. My favorite moment is when Tony says, and I'm kind of proud of it, which is such a nerdy way of making a big political statement. It's not, you know, nerds rule or, you know, it's anything. It's like, I'm a nerd, and I'm pretty proud of it. That scene makes me cry every time I see it. And when Robert and I created the TV show, King of the Nerds, which ran, one of the things that was sort of a thing with us, because we always loved the idea of tolerance, the idea of acceptance, the sorts of things that they bring out in this movie, that we were working with people who were much better than we were at reality television, but we were nerds. And this was sort of a reality TV show. It was really sort of a joke on reality TV shows, but we were using real nerds. And it was important to Bobby and me that tone, the tone in this movie, come through in that TV show. We don't mock the nerds. We don't laugh at the nerds. We're never cruel to the nerds. And if we ever felt like we were going off, like there was, a problem tone-wise on the show, every single time I used to make such a pain of myself for these executive producers because I would say, get out the movie, let's look at the pep rally. We have to remember the pep rally is what we want on our show. And it still gets me. And the fact that these things pop up in different places in the country have been great. I've gone to see them. I've loved it. But being here with you all and having this screening here, let alone the proclamation, I mean, come on. By the way, one other thing, really quick. I'm sorry. I'm taking way too much time. Tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, I'm leaving for Providence, Rhode Island. And there's the Comic-Con there. And all of the nerds are there. We're doing a reunion. And some of the alpha betas too. Ogre and Ted McGinley is going to be there, and Julie Montgomery is going to be there. Bobby, Larry B, Andrew. I mean, all but 2, I think, are showing up. And we're doing a big reunion for 3 days I know, and I'm going to take them copies of the proclamation so they can sort of be with us here. So thank you all. Enjoy the film, and we'll talk after.
Oh, and Curtis, I just want to make sure that you got your own official copy of the proclamation with the gold foil. And as any official city proclamation is, it's usually given out with a Greasy Tony's t-shirt.
As it should.
I don't know if you still have one, but here's another one.
I never had one.
You never had
Well,
one?
I mean, I wore one, but I didn't own one.
This is a night of miracles at the Loft. Okay, please enjoy. Nerds rule. Please welcome Booger, Curtis Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, thank you.
So this is way too exciting. Okay, so Curtis, just tell us a little bit. So the book, by the way, has all these great stories about the making of nerds here in Tucson.
Yes.
You also go into detail about how you were not real thrilled initially with the character of Booger.
Well, there was not a character to speak of when we started the movie. The first version that I saw, the Booger basically was non-existent. I mean, he was there to pick his nose and belch, which of course is basically why he's still there. But there were no real lines or anything. There was really nothing there. And in fact, I was not reading for Booger. There was nothing to read. But aside from that, I auditioned for the film reading Gilbert, reading the Anthony Edwards part, because there were no lines. So I wound up reading for a part that I thought I was reading for. And then after it was done, they called me up and said, well, no, Anthony Edwards is playing that role, but they really love you. which is like the kiss of death in Hollywood, is when they say, well, no, but they really loved you. You go, oh. And they said they'd like you to play another nerd. And I was going, well, you know, I knew Robert Carradine was playing the other one, and I said, well, who can it be? I mean, it's not Lamar, obviously, and it can't be Takashi, and I'm too old for Wormser, and, you know, trying to work out who that could possibly be. It was down to Poindexter and Booger, and I told my agent, I said, here's the deal. If these people love me so much and they want me in their movie, I will do Poindexter. That's a good part. I can make something of Poindexter. But if they offer me Booger, forget it. I'm not doing it. I'm turning it down flat. I don't need to know any more about this. If it's Booger, no. Poindexter, yes. Absolutely, end of discussion. And my agent said, are you sure of that? And I said, I'm very sure. There's nothing there. There's nothing for that character. I will not demean myself by going and stay on film in front of millions of people and pick my nose and belch. I'm not playing Booger. Slammed down the phone. And the agent called back about 10 minutes later and said, well, they offered you Booger. I said, okay. Well, you know, I mean, yeah, it worked out fine, which is why I'm here, you know. I've never been invited back to Chicago for a screening of Risky Business, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But Curtis, this was only your second film, so Risky Business was your first film.
Right.
So you seem pretty confident on screen, but you had a long theatrical background on stage.
I had a lot of theatrical background, but that didn't help much for movies. And the reason I appear confident is because we did so much work in the week previous to filming. So they brought us all in. They brought Bobby and Tony in even earlier, but they brought the rest of the nerds in to work on the script, work on our characters, and so on. This is the funny part, is that I'd gone through this classical tradition of learning how to act by these English teachers who'd come over from RADA and everything. And they had said, one of the things that we'd learned was that when you're preparing for a part, you should write a biography of the character. This was one of the lessons we learned. And the smaller the role, the better. Because they said, even though it's not going to mean anything to the audience, it'll mean something to you. It'll inform your performance. So by the time I was doing Revenge of the Nerds, I was still in that mindset. So I wrote a biography of Booger, in which I would understand, and it's actually in the book. I mean, I actually found the original notebook with my biography of Booger in it. And the funny thing was, at the time, I was trying to figure out how to make this character real. And so I wrote the biography, which would tell me all of the reasons why he's a misogynist and all the reasons he's disgusting and why he picks his nose and all of this. I was thinking that that's what I'll do. And so I wrote out the thing. So that was, and then I forgot about it, because that's what you do when you write out those biographies. Then when I started working on the book, I was going through all of this material at home in crates, and I found the biography. And I read it again for the first time in 30 years or whatever. And I realized it was me. I mean, I had gone out of my way to create a biography of someone else. And I look at it, and it's all of the insecurities, all of the lack of self-esteem, all of that. It was just me. As it turns out, I didn't really need to write the biography at all.
So, Chris, how many of the Nerds actors were self-identified as nerds?
Not many. I would say me, maybe Anthony, me and Anthony, maybe. I mean, now that I think about it, the rest of them weren't really. I mean, Bobby was aggressively not a nerd. He was sort of a self-identified nerd abuser He didn't want to play a nerd because he didn't like nerds. Who? I can't hear you. Oh, Ogre? No, Ogre was not a nerd. He was definitely not a nerd. But no, most of us were just actors, and going in there and being these parts. But I would say just really, now that I think about it, probably just the two of us.
And you mentioned small parts. There aren't a lot of small parts. You're a character actor. I think you identify as a character actor, yes?
Yeah. I identify as a nerdy character actor.
So there's no small parts for a character actor?
Yes, there are. But
Oh.
anyway. I've done enough of them, I know.
But your presence in this movie is so huge. I mean, I always think of you as the nerd in this film, but you're not really in it all that much.
I'm not in it all that much, and I don't believe I'm a nerd anyway. I think that Booger's not there for that reason. When Booger is chanting nerd, nerd, nerd at the end, it's because he's come a distance. Because the only reason I've always thought that the only reason Booger is in the movie, aside from shock value and, seeing somebody belch and pick his nose, which I'm not sure had ever been done on film before, now that I think about it. Aside from that, I think he was there to show how great the nerds were, because what happens is he gets thrown out in the same way that they do. At the same time, they're all wandering in the desert together. They've all been, like he says at the end of the movie, we've been stepped on, we've been put down, we've been, ostracized, and we're all in the same boat. And the nerds don't even think about it. The nerds never think, well, we're nerds, we should stick together and find our own house. They just say, okay, come on. And they take them along. And by the end of the movie, he's made he's come to terms with it. That's the way I always thought of it.
Yeah, because he seems kind of cool to me.
God, I don't know about
gross,
cool.
Gross, but kind of cool.
Gross, but cool. Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. Or
awesome.
that.
Or awesome. But do you think that the one reason Booger is so effective is because it's a sprinkling of Booger rather than a full-on
It's a sprinkling of
snot
Booger.
fest?
My God, that's a great word. A sprinkling of Booger.
I mean, too much Booger would be too much Booger, don't you think?
It would be. You're right. No, and that was the problem with the later movies, I thought, or one of the problems of many, was that, what makes this movie work so well is all of the nerds, including Booger, are there just enough. And then in the later movies, mainly because Anthony wasn't there, they just gave us all more to do. But you don't want to see more. You don't really need to see more. So that's why I think the first movie worked better than any of the others. Yeah.
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 So,
Rock on, Michelle.
rock on, Michelle. So, Curtis, we here in Tucson love debauchery.
Sorry?
We love debauchery here in Tucson. We're debauched.
Really?
Yes, because it's really hot, dry. We like debauchery. There's stories in this book about the debauchery that went on behind the scenes at Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
Could you just give us a little taste of what went down?
A little
taste
taste
of
of what
Booger?
went down.
Yeah.
Well, it was the 80s, and I think I don't need to say too much more than that. And it was also, I say something in the book about the fact that it may have been a sort of residual leftover of the lawless West that about shooting here specifically, that contributed to some of the shenanigans, which were considerable. And so it was a combination of basically it was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, only without the rock and roll.
Yes, and you talk.
Is that enough? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, you want to keep some secrets, but they're in the book.
Well, they're in the book, so I don't know.
I guess you're not keeping secrets, but
yeah. No, I don't want to tell you everything because I want you to buy the book, and then then you can find and underline your favorite parts.
But you want to know who? I don't say it here, but who was the epicenter of a lot of the shenanigans? They'll have to read the book to find out.
Well, no, I mean, there was a period of time there where we all tended to gather in John Goodman's room when he was there, and we did have quite a time. But sometimes it was in other people's rooms. I mean, Tim Busfield talks about in the book, because I interviewed all of them for the book so that I would get other people's views of what happened. And Tim Busfield was saying that, it was not long after we got there that everybody figured out, where the pot room was, where the coke room was, where the, we had everything laid out. And also there was a lot of exchange. It was like an exchange between the students at the university and the crew. There was a lot of sort of shuttling of people back and forth.
You scored your drugs from students?
Did I say that?
I'm just inferring. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the some of the fraternal organizations that would never have accepted us as members were happy to share their drugs with us.
Yes.
And it's maybe the only thing that gave us sort of warm feelings about fraternal organizations because we would never have gotten in otherwise.
Now I'm so proud that Revenge of the Nerds was shot in Tucson, but right on, Michelle, that's right. But the University of Arizona was not quite so
They
proud.
weren't so happy. They were not
Tell
happy.
us about that.
The university, which is what happens, when you're shooting on a place with a lot of impressionable young people who have had no experience in anything much, you have to send the script ahead of time and clear it with the administration. And they sent sort of a version of our script, and one of the understandings was that there would be no full frontal nudity. And that was really important that we understood that, and they found out that there were scenes, in fact, that were full frontal nudity, and they almost shut us down because we'd gone against the agreement that we had made with them, and we wound up having to explain that the scenes that were being shot with full frontal nudity were for the European release of the film. And it was a dicey situation there for a while, and the head of the university, the guy that we were dealing with, who almost shut us down, it had been sort of a big deal for a while. Booger's name, Dudley Booger Dawson, Dudley Dawson. Dudley was the name of the guy who was the head of the university that we were dealing with. And they put that in there as a final to him. And that's how I wound up being Dudley Booger Dawson.
So I love. They thought you were making the European art version of Revenge
That
of the
was
Nerds,
the
and that's what
European
they
art
thought.
version.
Yes,
That
yes.
was the one that was only going to be seen in Italy and France,
Yeah.
where they don't mind that sort of thing.
Well, they don't include this in their recruitment brochures anymore. So
No, I don't imagine they would. Actually, the same thing happened. I don't know if you heard about this. Recently, 10 years ago, whenever it was, I don't remember when it was, somebody got the idea to do a reboot of Revenge of the Nerds. And it wasn't going to be a sequel. We were not involved in it. But they were going to do a reboot, a remake of the movie. And I forget who the director was, but he was a director you know. And they went to Duke University to shoot it. It was going to be at Duke University. I know. It wasn't my choice. And so they went to Duke to shoot it. And apparently, and I have this from Carradine himself, who read the script. None of the rest of us did, but he did. And he said it was vile. And for Bobby to say that is something. So they were just out of control on that movie. And they got about halfway through before the same thing happened as here, where they found out that they were shooting something that was different than they'd been promised, and they wound up pulling the plug on the movie. It was never finished. It just disappeared. So we were lucky.
And we were lucky.
Boy, we were
lucky. So I just want to ask you briefly, you've had hundreds of roles. I mean, Booger is, would you say this is your defining role?
Yes.
But I want to ask you about the Savage Steve Holland movies,
Yeah.
because love them. Better Off Dead, One Crazy Summer.
Right.
Tell us a little something about your experience making those films and kind of what happened to Steve Holland. I think his career...
Well, it was unfortunate. No one really knows why. It was one of those weird Hollywood things where we started to do Better Off Dead, and he was the new thing. Savage was going to be the new thing in Hollywood. He was he was, you know, it was like John Hughes on acid. Was sort of the way people thought of him. He was family friendly but weird, and so he was a great new thing for Hollywood. And for some reason, by the end of they were all up for it, and then by the end of Better Off Dead, when it came out, they just went cold on him for no reason that any of us could figure out, and the movie tanked. And now, of course, it's considered a sort of classic. But at the time, and he was only able to do One Crazy Summer because he had a deal, and Cusack had a deal to work with him on that second movie. But if it weren't for that deal, he wouldn't have even been able to make that. And he did a couple of other features, one with Anthony Edwards that I did, How I Got Into College. But after that, it was, he just didn't do movies anymore, which was a pity. I thought I loved those movies.
He was great. And Charles DeMar is such a great character. And it's a sprinkling of Charles DeMar also. You're not in it a lot, but you make such an impact.
But that's what Savage says, in fact, says it in the book, because I interviewed Savage as well. And he says in the book that it was risky business that made him want to make that movie. And he was a fan of, Risky Business, yeah. He was a fan of Risky Business. He was a fan of Revenge of the Nerds. And he thought that if he could get the same guy who was in both of them, it would help. So when Charles DeMar says to Cusack's character, go that way really fast. If something gets in your way, turn. That's his version of what the fuck. Sometimes you got to say what the fuck. So it was really deliberate, and it's funny because I was reminded of it with seeing this again. Is that scene at the party when the Moos come over, and I go to the door and open the door, and they all come in. That is also a steal from Risky Business, because that's Bronson Pinchot letting the hookers in it was deliberate. We were just going, oh, I know, let's do this.
And it's such a weird, he was like the Buñuel of 80s teen movies. I mean, it was so weird.
That's exactly the way I put it, yeah.
And your laughing jag at the dance is so amazing. Was that improv?
That was improvised, because we had nothing to end that with. We had Stalin come up and say, you should, good-looking date, you should have her shave closer next time. And there was no response. I mean, on the script, there was no response. And for me, Stan Laurel was sort of a hero. I loved Laurel and Hardy. And Stan Laurel would do this thing where he would start laughing and couldn't stop. And some of the great scenes in the Laurel and Hardy films. And I said, what if just let me try this. So we did it that way. And it worked.
It worked. If I need to laugh, I think of that scene, and it's very easy. So I want to open it up for questions. I just wanted to ask you one question as we wrap up this portion. You in the book, you talk about Ringo Starr's theory of creativity, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
about how artists, he's talking about musicians, but I think it's for artists in general, have
Yeah.
10 years where they do their best work.
Right.
And you do good work before and after, but that's your peak, 10 years. Do you think that applied to your career?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I would say that period from 83 to 80, 89, around there. And then there were great things after that. You know, you were talking about Aquila and the Bee at dinner, and there was Ray and Supernatural and all of these things, which have been great, and I've loved them. But that period of time was definitely. I mean, you know, I was doing plays at the same time I was doing these movies. Some of them were more important to me than these movies. But as far as anyone else is concerned, that's the key point, I think.
And you said you didn't think you had a career till an actor in the 90s told you that you had
That
a
I
career.
had one. Yes. Kevin Corrigan. You know Kevin Corrigan, the actor? Kevin Corrigan. I was doing a show with him and in the 90s, and he said, "So what are you doing?" And I was irritable. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere and I wasn't doing anything, and I was sad. And I said, "I don't know. I'm just, you know, doing this fucking thing, and it's not working, and I did this pilot, and it didn't get picked up," and I was just griping. And he listened to me, he heard me out, and then at the end he said, "You know, you have a career that most actors my age really envy." And I went, "A career?" It was like, at that moment, 90s we're talking about, I had not considered myself as having had a career. I just thought I was going from one job to the next. And now, you know, starting with him, I've been able to look back and go, no, it's a damn career. Pretty good one, too.
It is a damn career. It's a great career. I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience. How about this guy right here? Yeah, please.
Last time I saw you was the early 90s. I was working with a women's group to keep women's clinics open.
Yeah.
And you were on a fence in Operation Rescue.
Oh, my God. You were there?
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, have you kept up your political activism?
Yeah, well, I'm still working with the same feminist group. He's talking about the Feminist Majority Foundation in Los Angeles. And I've been working with Feminist Majority Foundation since the early 80s. And what we used to do, what were you doing there? I know. This was when Operation Rescue kept trying to close down women's clinics. And we were all volunteers, right. And I was one of the organizers for it. And there's a picture which I have that somebody took that day of me on the gate of that clinic, like above the crowd, holding on. And yeah, it was, unfortunately, we still fight. But, you know, that's what we do. So, yes. But wow, you were there. That was Pacoima, right? Yeah. Yeah, we did that all the time. Wow. Never know. Yes? Yes?
Awesome. So I was introduced to your work actually through Dan Versus.
Oh, Dan Versus. Now, see...
Was Dan at all inspired by Booger, or was that more
No,
personal?
I don't think so. I mean, no, I don't think so. I think he was actually based on one of the writers, Dan Mandel. Chris Pierce and Dan Mandel were the ones who created that show, and Dan was just like Dan. He hated everything and was always angry, and I'm very good at that because I'm frequently angry, and so when they cast me in it over that period of 2 seasons or whatever it was, I found the weird thing about it was I found myself more and more. I realized I was angry about the same things Dan was. It became creepy after a while, but I loved that show. I thought it was great. Yes.
Hi, Tim Eaton worked.
Tim. Yes, Tim.
King of the Nerds, ZFVA. I just want to know if you and Bobby are gonna get back into reality TV.
No, I don't think so. He's asking about King of the Nerds and whether we're going to try and do that again. We tried to sell it to other networks when TBS canceled us, and we couldn't get it going. So No.
No more reality TV?
No, I'm not qualified. I mean, I'm really not qualified. But this was strictly because Bobby and I wanted to come up with a nerd show. I wouldn't know how to. Yes?
So you say you make backstories for your characters no matter how small to kind of get the feel.
No, I don't do it anymore. But
Well, okay, so in Curb Your Enthusiasm, did you ever get your laptop back that you lost?
Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah, I know. I did. No, I never got it back. Yeah, it was an interesting thing.
We just saw you at Phoenix Comic-Con earlier this year.
Yeah.
We lost our minds when we got through that episode.
Yeah.
Kismet again to have you on screen.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Sure. Thank you.
Curtis, right here.
Yes. The two quiet gentlemen over here.
Noted.
We try to be meek.
What?
We try to be meek. Here's my friend.
On behalf of everybody here, thank you for coming to Tucson and treating us like the large market that we
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
My question is, the Greasy Tony...
I want to mention one other thing. Is Jerry Dahlman still here? Where are you? There he is. Jerry Dahlman was the head of the acting academy that I went to in Michigan in 1973, and I had no idea where the man was until he showed up here tonight. My acting career, although Jerry wasn't one of our teachers, what was the official position?
I was the principal of the academy.
He was the principal of the academy. He was the dean of the academy.
I have to tell a story on Curtis.
Oh. Why did I bring this up?
Curtis was a student. He was also working at the Meadowbrook Theater, which is a regional theater in Michigan.
At the university. Oh, thank you very much.
If you're going to talk about me, at least...
Well, come here. Anyway, Curtis and I were in the Cane Mutiny Court Martial together. And Kurt, how many plays did you do at Meadowbrook?
10, maybe? I don't remember.
This guy was great at Meadowbrook. And what I'm trying to say is he had a great career before he ever went to Hollywood. We all loved him. He was a wonderful stage actor.
Thank you.
When he says that didn't help him in the film business, I don't believe it.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say that. Jerry Dahlman. Couldn't believe it. He showed up here. Yes?
Wait a minute, I'm getting ripped off of my question.
I want to comment on a question.
The Greasy Tony t-shirt.
Oh, the Greasy Tony t-shirt.
How did you get it? Is there a story behind it?
There's no story. All the T-shirts were picked up by the costume designer. I think he had been here early and had gone to Greasy Tony's, and they were selling them, so he just bought one and thought it would be good for Booger.
Okay.
I'm not sure I even knew that it was an actual place in Tucson for a while, but we wound up going there, of course, all the time.
Tucson
yeah.
Classic. Thank you.
Surely.
It's a classic. And this gentleman with another great Booger shirt on.
Yes.
So my first question was, had you ever eaten at Greasy Tony's?
Oh, well, yes.
Second question, very important question. Is it true that Stan Gable was the inspiration for our current president?
I never thought of it that way, actually. I better leave that one alone. Good question.
We love you even more.
Yes. Where should we go? The waiver in the back.
Hi, I love you. I have to ask. I'm Supernatural. Yes. Woohoo! Okay, as Metatron and Cassio, you guys were always so serious and intense.
Yeah.
What was the chemistry like off screen?
Great. Really great. I really love Misha. I mean, I loved all of those people. I liked working with everybody on that show. It sounds so boring, but I worked with him more than anyone, and so we got to know each other pretty well, and we have a lot of similar interests and beliefs and so on. So we connected really well. It was a great experience. I really miss not being on it.
I'm sorry, I just have to ask, how did you channel Metatron? Like, how did you do it?
How did I do it? I was there. I mean, that was one of those, unlike Booger, Metatron was on the page without question. And until the last episode, the one where they finally killed me off, the last episode was the only one I had problems with. Questions, serious questions about motivations and stuff like that no one wants actors to talk about. And that was the only time. Aside from that, the whole time, everything was perfect, word perfect. I never had to do anything except talk. Yes?
So, first of all, Charles DeMar and Better Off Dead, fantastic, and thank you.
Thank you.
Life-affirming.
Life-affirming, well.
And also, as far as Booger goes, like, you're the guy with the electric guitar among the nerds, but you're a bit of a cast-off. So,
yeah.
And I related to that an awful lot as a young kid. So, when you went into that, did you think of that at all as your, hey, I'm the cast-off among the nerds, or how did you approach it?
Yeah, I did. I thought that I was that. I thought I was the cast-off. I didn't think he was a nerd. I was a nerd. That was the funny thing. I mean, talking to Bobby, we've talked about it endlessly, about the fact that Bobby was not a nerd playing the ultimate nerd, and I was a lifetime nerd playing somebody in a movie full with nerds who wasn't one. It was just weird, it's acting, as they say. Yes? The part in Ray? I just read for it. Actually, it was the woman, the casting director for Risky Business, who had not seen me in 20 years for one part. She had never seen me. And then one day she called me in for Ray to play Ahmet Erdogan. And I got it. What an amazing thing. Yeah. Everybody thinks I'm Clint Howard, but aside from that.
No.
Yes?
Better looking.
Much better looking.
What's your favorite role on stage?
On stage? Oh, God. Really hard to say. Because most of them you wouldn't know. They were from plays, obscure plays and things like that. It would be really hard to say. I did love it, though.
Comedy, drama, or tragedy? What's your favorite?
How many what?
Comedy, drama, or tragedy?
Tragedy. What's your favorite?
Oh, comedy, drama, and tragedy. Comedy. I love comedy. Yes. Beatles shirt. Awesome.
So for Revenge of the Nerds, can you talk about filming the musical scene towards the end where you play electric guitar?
Yeah. The strange thing about that, just one thing about it, is that why am I in an Elvis Presley jumpsuit? And the question, what wound up happening was, there was supposed to be, originally, we were supposed to be doing individual solo numbers. And I forget, I can't forget who else was doing it or what they were doing, but they wanted me to do Presley. And so they fitted me out in this Presley outfit, and then they gave me the first VCR I had ever seen, the first one, and they put it in my room and gave me a tape of Presley singing America the Beautiful, or some, I don't know, one of his things, where he's doing, and they said, learn this. And then for the competition, you're going to sing America the Beautiful as Presley. I mean, lip sync it, whatever. And I worked on it for weeks. and then the night of the filming, Jeff Canoe and Peter McGregor Scott came over, the producer, and Jeff said, so here's the problem. I know you've really been working on this for a long time, but we've had second thoughts, and I think we're not going to be able to use the Presley sequence. I think we're just going to use all of you together. So if you really want to film it, we'll film it, but we just want you to know we'll never use it. He said, okay, I don't have to do it. That's fine. So I didn't do it, but in the meantime, we'd already shot this. So there's no explanation as to why Booger is wearing an Elvis Presley jumpsuit.
I'm just curious, who here was at that Spring Fling event where they filmed that? You were there. Michelle was there, of course.
Of course, Michelle was there.
Michelle, she was everywhere. I think we're getting ready to wrap up, yes?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's up to you.
So Curtis is going to hang out and sign books and merchandise up here on stage. We're going to move the table up here.
Actually, somewhere around here. Oh, look at that. She has them. Thank you. I'll just take one for right now. But if you buy the book, then I sign the book, and in addition to that, you get a signed picture of Booger with his family-friendly "Give Me Head Till I'm Dead" shirt.
Buy the book, get that photo. That's amazing.
That's right.
So
She'll
Curtis,
love it.
do you have any parting words for Tucson?
Oh, amazing that this has happened. To have gone so long without being back here. Every place I've been for other movies, places I've shot, I've gone back to for one reason or another, except Tucson until today. And it's been awesome and quick, but thank you. And thank you for coming tonight.
Across the world.